Hey, you guys, popping on here just like I said I would to do another movie review. Been a little while since I've done one of these live stream movie reviews. Haven't really had a lot of time to do them, but here I am back again. So this is the movie that I told you guys last night that I was going to be talking about. This is The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I had actually been wanting to see for a really long time, so I'm glad I kind of got around to it. So this was directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, a Greek filmmaker. And he's pretty, I guess I want to say he's gets a lot of accolades. He's like a pretty celebrated director, I guess. He was actually nominated for 6 Oscars. I don't think he's ever won one, but he did win a BAFTA and he won a Golden Globe and stuff like that. The style of his movies is, I'm going to say, kind of provocative, also kind of idiosyncratic, I guess. But is so distinctive that I'm pretty sure that you could never mistake one of his movies for someone else's, even though the subject matter of them tends to be pretty different. Now I'm gonna say, okay, so I kind of fucked up because I thought the only movie of his that I absolutely know that I've seen, like prior to doing this review, was The Favorite from 2018, which is an excellent like black comedy period piece. We actually saw it in the theater, and I loved it. I actually thought that I had seen Dogtooth from 2009, but then when I went back and read the synopsis, I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't really sound all that familiar. So I was just like, did I confuse it with another movie? And then I was like, maybe I confused it with Dogville, the Lars von Trier movie, which came out in 2003, which also has Nicole Kidman in it, which this movie does too. So maybe that was what confused me, or because I kind of feel like I was reading the synopsis of Dogtooth, I'm like, it sounds sort of familiar, but I would have remembered if I saw it. So maybe I just like started watching it and then I was like had to do something else and I never finished it or something like that. But you know, whether that's neither here nor there. It's like, so I thought I saw it, but I hadn't seen it, or at least I haven't seen it all the way through. So the only other film other than this one of his that I've seen is The Favorite, which I absolutely loved. And this movie, this came out in 2017, and I had been wanting to watch this for a long time. It's one of those movies that, hi there, John, kind of turns up on a lot of people's most disturbing movies lists, which, you know, if you know me, that's just kind of like open invitation. It's like, ooh, I definitely want to watch that. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I finally got around to doing it, and actually I was really excited because at least as of this live stream in February 13th, February 13th 2024, it's actually available to watch for free on Tubi, which is pretty cool. So here's the thing, I don't know if I would call Killing of a Sacred Deer a horror movie exactly. It does have horror aspects to it, and I don't know. I guess I would call it, like, the Wikipedia page calls it psychological thriller, I guess. But I don't know. I kind of feel like it veers more towards psychological horror because it is sort of set in reality, but not exactly. And it maybe has like a supernatural aspect to it. It's kind of left ambiguous. So I don't know. So I guess you could call it a psychological horror movie for sure. But whatever you call it, I mean, it's pretty unsettling. At least I found it very unsettling. And I think that a lot of the dread that it evokes, it kind of comes from the whole tone of it, because it has this weird, and I think a lot of his other movies have this. The Favorite didn't have this, but I've heard that like some of his other movies do. It's just kind of this very odd, off-kilter, almost kind of like robotic dialogue, and sometimes like the actions of like the characters in the movie. It's like I said, it's set in reality, in the real world, but it also kind of has this weird tone of like unreality to it, almost as though it's happening in a dimension that's just like slightly different from ours. You know what I mean? It's like almost the same, but not quite. So it comes across like that, which I think goes a long way toward making it seem a little disquieting, like when you watch it. So, as with a lot of movies that I talk about on here, I would strongly suggest going into this movie with as little foreknowledge of the plot as possible. Because I think that the movie, because I didn't read anything about it, like I just vaguely knew kinda that it was like a sort of a disturbing psychological horror movie, but I didn't read a plot synopsis or anything like that. I never do that. So But I think it's a lot more effective when you have absolutely no idea what's going on or what might happen next, because there's kind of just a lot of stuff that you're just kind of like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And it's like, and it really kind of plays into your enjoyment of the movie, if that's the word that I exactly want to use. I'm going to say this movie actually made me extremely anxious at several points. The whole thing was just kind of, it had this veneer of like just this real sick, like uncomfortable, like I was really uncomfortable like the whole time that I was watching it. And I think that was part of it was caused by the kind of like bizarre speech patterns and the bizarre like reactions of the characters. I think some of it might have had to do with the background score too. It has like a really weird background score and like musical cues, which really kind of keep you on edge like pretty much the whole time. They're like really good at doing that. So I'm not going to spoil the entire movie, but I will be revealing some plot points that you might not want to know before going in if you haven't seen it. So, you know, please be advised of that. As I said, if you haven't seen this and it sounds like something that you would want to see, then it's better going into it having no idea like what it's about or where it's going to go. It's like a lot more effective that way, trust me. So here's the thing. This movie, I mean, you pretty much know you're in for it, like, from the very first couple of minutes. Because there's classical music, comes in on classical music, and then it's playing over this just completely black screen for kind of a distressingly long time. So long that you just know, because, like, the longer it goes on, you're like, he's going to pop some fucked up imagery in my face, isn't it? Like, that's what it's almost kind of like a jump scare kind of situation. Like, you know it's coming, but you don't know what's going to be. And that indeed is exactly what happened. Because what happens after this big, long, you know, black screen and this nice music and everything, it's like, bam, tight close-up of open heart surgery. Right there in your face. Suddenly assaulting your eyeballs. So, and this heart scene, this open heart surgery scene, also stays on the screen for an excruciating amount of time. So you're just kind of like, and it's very tight close up, like I said. So you're just like basically watching this heart beating like in somebody's open chest cavity, while all of these little surgeon scalpels and stuff are like, you know, working around over here and stuff. And I'm just like watching. I'm not grossed out by gore or surgery or anything like that. The only things, and I've said this before, the only things that really gross me out in horror movies are stuff to do with like poop or vomit or something. Like gore, blood, stuff like that doesn't bother me. So I wasn't really bothered. I thought it was funny because I knew something, I said some fucked up shit's gonna come on after this long black screen. And then I was like, oh, there it is. You know what I mean? Big open heart surgery. So it didn't really bother me, but it does go on for like a really long time. So you're kind of starting to go, okay, it's like, it's kind of grossing me out now. So after that big log opening scene, yeah, Kwame Ken said this was a trippy movie. It really was. I really liked this a lot, but it made me very, very uncomfortable. So then we get into the main story. And we're introduced to one of our main characters, who is a cardiothoracic surgeon, who you're led to believe was the guy that was just doing the open heart surgery. And his name is Dr. Stephen Murphy, and he's played by Colin Farrell. He's great in this. Actually, everybody is great in this. So after the surgery is over, there's this really weird scene where he's walking down the hall of the hospital, like having a conversation with his colleague, who I think his name is Dr. Banks. And they're talking about watches, like, you know, like he's had this watch for a long time and he's thinking about getting a new one because I'm tired of it. And they're talking about, oh, well, how deep do yours? Mine's, you know, waterproof up to 200 meters and all this other kind of stuff. And then they're debating the ins and outs of like leather straps versus metal straps. Can you change that strap up for something? But, and like the way that they're talking, okay, so I'm going to say that if you see this first scene of them just like walking down, two doctors walking down the hall talking about watches, and are intensely put off by this weird, stilted, very emotionless tone that they're using, then I'm going to say you might want to hop off this train right about now, because this is pretty much how everyone's going to communicate for the rest of the movie. And if that's going to bother you, then you're going to have a bad time. So you might not want to go through it, is what I'm saying, because it's just kind of like everybody is just very... it's like not even matter of fact. It's almost kind of like robotic in a way that's kind of like hard to explain. And like but then sometimes they say really like weird fucked up things, but they say everything in the same tone. So like I said, it's really kind of disquieting. So later on that same afternoon, you're led to assume, Steven has what appears to be kind of like a clandestine sort of meeting with this 16-year-old kid whose name is Martin Lang. And he's played by, and I'm sure I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong, because I think he's an Irish actor, Barry Keoghan. I'm sure that's not right. But because I know it's kind of like a Gaelic Celtic kind of, and it's usually not pronounced at all like the way it's spelled. I probably should have looked it up beforehand. I usually do, but I forgot. But yeah, so you guys know who I'm talking about in this movie. So Steven is with this kid, Martin, and they're at a diner talking about French fries and why do you always eat your French fries last? So like I said, it's this whole thing. And then he takes him out to like this waterfront park or something like that. And he gives the kid a present. Like he gives him this really expensive watch, kind of like the one that he was talking about like to the other doctor in the hospital earlier. So Martin seems like really weird and like really off-putting. And I think you're kind of like on edge at this point because you're not entirely sure what the relationship between Steven, the doctor, and this kid is. Like I'm sitting there going, is this the Big Brother program? Is it his estranged son? Is it a son that he had like with some other family that his present family doesn't know about? Or is there something more kind of sinister going on? You know what I mean? You don't really know. I mean, there doesn't appear to be any like sexual component to their interactions. But it just seems very, like I said, very stilted and awkward. And the fact that you're pretty sure, I mean, it's implied that Steven is hiding this from his family. It kind of makes you wonder, like, what the hell is going on with this kid? Like, who is this kid? You know what I mean? So that evening, again, you're led to assume. So Dr. Steven is back home having dinner with his family. And these are his wife, Anna, who's actually played by Nicole Kidman. And then he's got a couple kids. I think they're both teenagers. Like the older one, teenage daughter, her name is Kim. She looks about 15-ish, something like that. And then he has like a younger son, Bob, who looks about 13, maybe 12. I have a hard time like with kid ages, you know what I mean? But they're both kind of like teenagers, you know what I mean? So the whole conversation around this dinner table is just as like weird. Oh, thank you. Somebody helped me. Keoghan or Keoghan? Keoghan. Okay, so I got it sort of right, I think. But yeah, sorry about that, Barry. I should have, like I said, I should have looked it up, but I didn't. But he's great in this. But yeah, he's like super, super creepy though. But yeah, so they have these weird conversations around the dinner table, like talking about, yeah, well, for one thing, like at first it's not too weird because like Dr. Steven is saying to his son, it's because his son has like real long hair and he's just like, you told me you were gonna get a haircut and like, why don't you get a haircut tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, I'll get a haircut like after this party that they wanted to go to. And then the mom is all kind of like, I don't think he should get a haircut. He has lovely hair. We all have lovely hair. It's that kind of shit. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on with these people? It's like so fucking weird. So yeah. And I kind of feel like, so that's kind of weird. And then like it gets a little more peculiar when Steven and Anna like, you know, go to bed, like go to their bedroom. And we find out that they are apparently real into a game called General Anesthesia, where essentially Anna just lays there and pretends to be under general anesthesia while Steven has sex with her. So that's nice. So I don't really know if, because the way she kind of said general anesthesia, so I don't know if there's like a whole menu of stuff they pick from. It's like local anesthesia, general anesthesia. You know, there could be like some other factors there that, you know, that's different. That is, I'm not really sure. But I was just kind of like, wow, okay. I mean, you know, I know that's not really that weird of a kink, to be honest. But I just thought it was kind of funny the way she comes in and she's like general anesthesia and she's like laying in the bed. Is this okay? She's like laying there like she's unconscious and he's just like, all right, going to town. So yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. Hey Zach, what's up? I wonder what the next step up from a fisheye lens Yorgos is going to use on his next movie. Yeah, we'll find out. You'll find out. But yeah. Oh, as an aside, I want to say just as kind of, because this actually happens a little bit later in the movie, but as a example of what I'm talking about, like with all these fucking weird, the way that these family like talk to each other, there's kind of like a later scene where Steven is, you know, because he's a surgeon and everything, and he's speaking at like this big fancy dinner convention kind of deal. And then after his speech is over, he tells his work colleague, I think it's the same guy from before, the watch guy, Dr. Banks, that his daughter got her first period. Like, in the same way that he's just like, oh, she made the honor roll, or, you know, my son did really good this, oh, and my daughter got her first period. And the guy's like, what? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, it's just, you know what I mean? So you get the gist of, like, how fucking weird this is. Like I said, sometimes they say really mundane things, and then sometimes they say shit like that. You're like, wait, what? But it's all, like, in this same kind of robotic tone. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of funny. So, meanwhile, Steven has decided that he thinks it's time for Martin, the 16-year-old kid that hangs out with him, he's going to invite him over to finally meet his family. And it's right about this time in the movie that you find out what the relationship between them is. I don't think they specify how long ago it was, but sometime before, Steven performed surgery, like open heart surgery, on Martin's dad, but the guy died on the operating table. Now, Steven felt bad for the kid for reasons that become somewhat clearer later on in the movie, and so I guess he decides to become something of a replacement father figure or something of that nature. They go kind of more into it, like, as the movie goes on. So Martin comes over to spend the day with the Murphy family, and he seems, you know, charming enough, but, you know, he's pretty awkward, he's kind of an awkward kid. Now, he hangs out with the teenagers, Kim and Bob, like, up in one of their rooms or whatever, and they also have, like, a bunch of weird conversations. The one in particular that I remember the best was about underarm hair. Like, Bob asks Martin, do you have hair under your arms? And he's like, yeah, can I see it? And then he's like, sure. And then he shows it to him, and he's like, oh, my dad has, like, 3 times more than that. My dad is, like, super hairy. So it's just, like, this whole, like, weird conversation. I'm just like, okay. So it's that. Also, it becomes pretty clear that Kim might be sort of developing a crush on Martin, even though he's kind of creepy. So Steven actually offers to let Martin stay overnight with them, but he's like, no, I have to go back home. I don't like leaving my mom alone. And he also says something to the Murphys, like, akin to, oh, we live in a not so nice house in a not so nice neighborhood. You know what I mean? But he doesn't say it mean, but you can sense that there's kind of, like, some resentment there, because obviously, you know, Dr. Murphy is a heart surgeon, and this doesn't play too much into the thing, but Anna, the wife, is also, she's an ophthalmologist, I think. So it's like they've got cash. Okay, so they have, like, this really big nice house. So there's that. So you can tell that there's maybe some underlying resentment there. Now, from this point forward, Martin starts to get more, like, stalkery, right? Like, he shows up at Steven's workplace. Like, Steven will be driving out the parking garage and be like, hey, is that the fucking kid? Like, what's he doing walking around there? You know what I mean? He starts taking Kim, the daughter, like, out for rides on a motorcycle, even though, you know, the parents don't really like it. And he just, I don't know, he overall just kind of starts to try to insinuate his way, like, further and further into Steven's life and the life of his family. And he actually invites Steven to dinner with him and his mom at their house in a way that he kind of can't say no. Like, he basically calls and he's like, oh, you should, you know, come. I want to return the favor, because, you know, Martin went over and had dinner with them. I want to return the favor. You need to come over and have, you know, dinner with me and my mom. She'll make meatloaf. And he's like, yeah, we'll do that sometime. Oh, I already told her tomorrow. Like, you have to do it tomorrow. And he's just like, fuck me. And then he's just like, yeah, I guess I have to. Because, like I said, at this point, it's not too bad. And he still feels bad for this kid. So he ends up having to go. So he goes to the house. Martin, you know, they have dinner. And then Martin guilts him into staying to watch his favorite movie, which is Groundhog Day, by the way. But then in the middle of the movie, like, Martin's like, well, I'm going to bed. So leaves Steven alone with his mom, who's played by Alicia Silverstone, actually. I don't think they ever say what the mom's name is, because she's only, like, in one scene. And the mom starts kind of putting the moves on him, right? Oh, you have beautiful hands. And she's getting real close. And, you know, you should taste my tart. You know what I mean? She made, like, a caramel tart. Yeah, it's this whole thing. So he's just kind of like... yeah, gotta go. This is, like, getting real weird. So he extricates himself from the situation. And, but Martin seems just, like, bound and determined to hook his mom up with Steven even though Steven very reasonably says, hey, in case you hadn't noticed, I already have a wife who I love very much, and I have a couple kids, so knock it off. You know what I mean? I'm not, gonna have sex with your mom. You know what I mean? Just leave me alone. Now, so not too long after Steven turns down this very tempting offer, you know what I mean? Nothing against Alicia Silverstone. She's actually quite cute in this movie, but I'm just saying, it's just the whole situation is weird. So not too long after that, something very, very odd occurs. Steven's youngest son, Bob, wakes up for school one morning, and he says that he can't move his legs, like they're numb. So they take him to the hospital, and they do all kind of tests on him, but they can't find anything wrong with the kid. Now, Steven is pretty pissy, and he's just convinced that the kid is faking. Like, he's like, oh, maybe there was a test at school he didn't study for or something like that. Like, he's just trying to get attention, right? But the longer it goes on, like, the doctors are like, oh, he's fine, and then they take him home, but then he collapses again, like so they have to keep him for observation until they can figure out what's wrong. Now, so he doesn't really seem to be getting any better. Now, there is one completely off-the-wall scene where Steven is attempting to get Bob to admit that he's faking his illness. He's like, I tell you what, I'll tell you a secret about me that I never told anybody ever, and then you tell me a secret. Like I said, hoping that he'll say, yep, I'm faking this whole illness. The weird thing is that the secret that the dad, Steven, tells to his son is that when he was young, he's like, I had just started learning to masturbate, and you know what I mean? And it was only just like a little drop or something like that. And I was like really curious about it because all of these boys have been talking about it at school, like how it was supposed to be like a bigger deal than that. So he's like, so one day when his dad was passed out drunk, he actually went in there and like jacked off his own dad so he could see what the fuss is all about. And he tells this to his son, like, I never told anyone that before, and now you have to tell me that you're faking. And he's like, Dad, I'm not faking. You know what I mean? But he wasn't like at all shocked that his dad had told him that. I'm just like, this is so fucking crazy. This is the craziest fucking movie. So anyway, the upshot of the matter is, and this is kind of, I don't know if this is necessarily a spoiler alert, but I already said earlier that I'm not going to spoil the whole movie, like what happens at the end or anything, but I'm going to like say certain plot points. So the upshot of the matter is that Martin has caused Bob's mystery illness somehow. It's implied, at first I thought it was poison, but I think it kind of implied that it's more like a supernatural curse. Like as it goes on, just the way that people react to it and stuff like that, I think it's more like it's supernatural. You know what I mean? It's more like a curse kind of thing, because there's no way that he could have administered the poison and done it that way. So yeah, it's supernatural. So at this stage, he gives Steven a choice. He says, you can either kill one member of your own family of your choice, which is nice, to make up for killing Martin's dad on the operating table, or he can watch each member of his family die one by one from the same, lingering illness that Bob has. And he says that this has four stages. He's like, basically, first you can't walk, your legs are all numb, and then you completely lose your appetite, like you don't want to eat or you can't eat, and then you start bleeding from the eyes, and then you die. You know what I mean? So there's that. So he's basically like, well, either kill one of your family members, or I'm going to make all of them die like this, and you can't stop me. And like I said, it's implied that it's supernatural, so you can't really do anything about it. So I'm going to say, if this premise sounds kind of out there, this is actually loosely based on the Greek myth of Iphigenia, which is actually mentioned in the film as like a topic of an essay that Kim wrote in school. So in the story, in the myth, Agamemnon kills a sacred deer, hence the title of this movie, in this grove which belongs to the goddess Artemis. And she then insists that he sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia, to make up for killing the deer. So this is kind of the same situation, is what I'm... And like I said, it does have a veneer of unreality or supernatural kind of thing to it, but not to a great degree. You know what I mean? It's almost like slightly hyper real, but that's it. So for the rest of the movie, like after this ultimatum is given, it's kind of like Steven, desperately trying to figure out a way, like, out of this predicament. And And kind of as it goes on, like the family members start kind of jockeying for position, trying to not be the one that's chosen to get killed. I mean, it almost sounds funny, and it kind of is, but not in a like funny haha kind of way. It's just more like in a really very dark, low-key, horrifying kind of way. Like, this is not over the top funny. It's not even like black comedy funny, but it's still kind of funny but also horrifying at the same time, if that makes any sense. There's even one scene where Steven goes to see the principal at his kid's school, and he's essentially asking, like, well, which one has better grades, and like which one is more talented, like, or whatever. Like, he's trying to help him pick, like, which one is better, like which one he should kill. And I was just like, I thought that scene was like, I don't know, it's kind of one of those scenes that kind of makes you want to laugh and scream at the same time, because it was just like horrifying, but it's also very, very darkly funny, because this is kind of my sense of humor, so I kind of thought that was hilarious. Like, right, but it's played completely straight. You know what I mean? So I think that's what made it funnier to me. So yeah. If my description of it has told you anything, this is absolutely, definitely not a movie for everybody. And I'm gonna say, if you can't hang with the really affected dialogue and just the off-kilter tone of the whole thing, then I would recommend probably giving it a pass, because you might just find the whole thing annoying as shit, or like too precious or too affected or whatever. But I think it was kind of that weirdness about it, like that just alienness, that otherworldliness a little bit, that kind of made it a lot more effective to me, and like made it a lot more compelling, because as the movie went on, I found myself just getting like more and more apprehensive, because I didn't really know where this was gonna go. And so I kind of felt like, as I was watching it, I kind of felt like I was watching a slow motion car crash, you know what I mean, that I couldn't really look away from. And because you didn't really know, like, how are they going to resolve this situation if it's supernatural, which it's implied that it was. So I'm just kind of like, there's really kind of no way out of this, and it's just kind of like, that it's gonna end badly, but it's like you can't like look away from it, you know what I mean? And like I said, I really have to, in particular, like, everybody in this is great, but I really have to single out somebody told me how to pronounce it, Barry Keoghan, yeah. The guy that plays Martin, the kid that plays Martin, like I said, I think he's an Irish actor. He was fantastic in this. Because his whole character was, he was supposed to be like this kind of dorky, awkward 16-year-old, but he balanced that really well with making the kid threatening and making him like really menacing in a way that seemed like it would have really been hard to pull off, you know what I mean? Because he was like actually really menacing in this, even though he was just this dorky teenager, which was I thought that was like a really good feat that he pulled off. So I thought he was like really, really great in this. So, and I mean, him being that way contributed a lot to just the whole tension through the story. Like I said, this kind of made my stomach hurt. Like, when I was watching this movie, I was kind of like, oh, it was just making me so uncomfortable, like the whole thing. I don't know, there was something about it that just like really got to me, because this is, it's not the most graphic, it's not the scariest, it's not the most disturbing or anything like that, but it is one of the most unsettling movies I've ever seen. It is just very unsettling, and it kind of gets under your skin like that. So, make of that what you will. And it seems like most of y'all that are here have probably seen it, but, it's, if you've seen any of other Yorgos Lanthimos films, like, I feel like a lot of them are sort of like this. Like I said, they're very mannered, very affected. So if that's something you like, then you would probably love this. If it's not something you like, then this is probably not going to be for you. But I really liked it a lot, and we'll probably rewatch it at some point, even though I'll probably give it a while, because like I said, this did kind of make me like really anxious. But I think it only made me anxious not just because of the tone of it, but because I didn't know what was gonna happen. Like, especially like at first with him and that kid, I was just like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, what is their relationship? And I didn't know where it was gonna go. So now that I kind of know where it's gonna go, it might not be as anxiety inducing for me, but it was like the first time around. But yeah, so Khan says, the scene where there's a Kubrick zoom on Nicole Kidman's face and then just goes on a rant against her husband was awesome. Like, she gets annoyed at how he talks. Yeah, there was just kind of, and I forgot to mention that whole scene where he was like making a joke about how he's gonna like cast a spell like to get the curse off or something, and he's just like, you got any pubes around? And he's like looking in the kitchen drawers and stuff. Where's the pubes? And I was just kind of like, this is so fucking crazy. This is like the most bizarre movie. And I think that was a good scene too, because it was just like this explosion of emotion, whereas most of the movie is just very, very deadpan, you know what I mean? So it was just kind of like these just explosions of emotions that I thought was like really effective. But yeah, so this is a weird one for sure. Like I said, if you're into like weird psychological horror, then you'll probably dig it, but it is kind of strange. But I found it very, very unsettling, and maybe you will too. So I guess that'll wrap it up for this little live stream here. Thanks everybody for dropping by. And we will be back again tomorrow night doing our Valentine's Day special, which is going to be about Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. So that should be a fun one. So please drop by tomorrow evening and hang out with us for the regular show. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Bye.